Good morning. Welcome to another thought for the day. I hope you're all well. Please excuse me if today's thought is a somber one. I want to talk about an important issue that's close to my heart. And to be honest, today I have no other thoughts but these. Sometimes we need to talk about hard things, don't we? And these are hard things. Because today is the third anniversary of the death by suicide of a young friend of mine. I've been friends with his family for the past 40 years and I'd seen him grow up. And he was always, as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, genuinely lovely person. Someone who cared for others, who was funny, who was often the life and soul of the party. And the last time I saw him was at his 40th birthday party. I watched from the sidelines at him dancing. Everyone wanted to be with him and everyone at the party wanted to dance with him. He was like a magnet to people. He had a 3-year-old son who he loved and was so proud of. And he'd also taken on 2 other children of his partners and had become a loving father to them. He was very popular at work and people just loved him. He loved life. But unbeknown to most of us, things were going wrong for him. And 3 years ago today, he sat at his computer desk trying to win money playing online poker. And after his death, it was found out that he'd built up some debts, and it seemed that he was trying to win money to pay them off. And his computer records show that he'd won several £1,000s at one point. But he kept gambling until there was nothing left. And it seemed that this was the last straw. It was discovered that over the past months he'd been researching on the internet how to commit suicide. It's all there. And this night he moved from his computer and hung himself. And his 3-year-old son found him. And today, I know that his mum and dad and his brother and his sister are sitting in the rain under umbrellas, sitting on a bench named in his honour by a tree that was planted in his name, most likely silently crying, silently remembering him. But remembering him is not just an anniversary event, but something that is daily, minute by minute, hour by hour event. His mum has had to stop listening to music because a song might come on that he liked, or the lyrics may be too painful to hear. She has panic attacks. She describes her grief as being on a roller coaster. Access for support was very difficult to get. I cannot imagine such pain. I can only observe it and be available to them as best I can. And to see people you love, and I love them very much, to see them in so much pain is heartbreaking. His family asked me to officiate at his funeral, and it was the first that I'd ever done. I took it as an honour to do it, but I did it with some trepidation given my lack of experience. And it was a secular funeral, so I was unable to speak about faith, about the hope that is implicit in my faith. The crematorium was full with people having to stand in the aisles, and the love for him was palpable. And as the funeral progressed, so did the feeling of grief, of pent-up emotion in that place. And the only thing I could think of doing at one point to find some expression for that was to ask everybody to stand up and give him a round of applause. And the applause went on for 5 minutes, and I had to say, let's continue. As people were leaving the service, 2 or 3 people separately asked me if I was a Christian. And when I said that I was, they all said we needed to know that, we needed to hear that. See, there were people wanting that expression of faith in that situation. This man was a man so loved and respected. The question why hung in the air for everyone, but more so his family, who berated themselves and were angry with him in equal parts at different times. The roller coaster of emotions. It's a complicated grief because it's intertwined with trauma, and there's no easy path to peace for them. The whys and the if onlys are still there and won't go away. And how, as Christians, do we respond individually and as church? And it's a subject that many in wider society would like to sweep under the carpet because it's too difficult. And we can't sweep it under the carpet because it's almost getting to epidemic levels. We can't, as Christians, sweep it under the carpet simply because it's too difficult. But we wouldn't be true to the tenets of our faith if we just mirror societal responses. You know, I didn't know until I was preparing this talk that the Church of England only changed ecclesiastical law in 2015 to allow people who've committed suicide to be buried or cremated according to its funeral rites, unless they sought special permission from the bishop. But apparently there isn't any record of anyone asking for special permission from the bishop. Well, thankfully this was either widely disregarded by clergy or unknown. You know, and the church's responses to suicide over the centuries have certainly added pain and distress to those who have been left behind. I just hope, I suppose we all hope, that we live in more enlightened times. You know, suicide begins long before someone actually takes their life. That's where we need to be. It usually starts with a disappointment. It leads to discontentment, and that discontentment can lead to despair, and that despair can lead to those destructive choices. In a sense, we need to find a way to be in those places. How do we begin to give the hope that is central to our faith to those who feel hopeless? How accessible are we to those who grieve? How do we listen? How do we create compassionate spaces for people to be? How do we approach the issue without fear? How do we begin to inform ourselves? I don't have all the answers, but I know one thing, that we need to talk about it, because Jesus compels us to respond. God bless.